Hi folks, this is Steven Universe, episodes 4 through 6. Before we start, I want to apologize for advance if my voice sounds even more obnoxiously nasal than usual, or I sniffle or sneeze or anything like that. I've got kind of a cold coming on, so sorry about that. That's also why I'm even more unkempt than usual, wearing a sweatshirt, all that kind of stuff. There we go. Anyway, so let's start with these episodes. Were all pretty good. The show is continuing strong from a very strong start, so that's good so far. I'm really enjoying this, so I'm very happy this is what y'all picked. And by y'all, I mean the one person who voted. Thank you. So this first episode, episode 4, was, blanking on the name, Together Breakfast. And this is the one where Steven basically wants everyone to get together for breakfast, so he goes into the temple with all of its dangers. I really like the interior of the temple. It's this really bizarre space with its own rules, all kinds of twisted, waterfalls that curve and rooms where gravity shifts around. Really cool stuff. I have a feeling the Crystal Heart will be back. Also interesting to me that the temple, is their home, but is also dangerous. Most of the time, superheroes or whatever they are have a safe space from which to operate. This is the opposite. Their home is a dangerous place in and of itself, even when they're not going out to fight evil. So that's unusual and cool. We get a bit of characterization of the two people whose rooms we see, Pearl and Amethyst. They are very much clashing here, which is unsurprising because Pearl is very neat, very proper, and Amethyst is neither. Amethyst is a slob, and I love her for it. I particularly like how, she claims to have a system when Pearl organizes her things, but the truth is, she just likes it messy, and she kicks stuff around to make it messy. I can understand that. I get unhappy in an excessively organized environment. It stresses me out because I'm afraid to touch anything for fear of screwing it up. A place that's a bit messy is a lot more comfortable for me. I also think Pearl strikes me as one of those people who, and the Amethyst does too, one of those people who can't tell the difference between disorganization and filth. There is a difference. There's a difference between being messy and being dirty. And neither of them seems to quite get that. Being dirty is actively bad for you. It is how you get diseases. And then again, I am not currently in a position to be lecturing anyone about that because I got a cold. Anyway, it was a fun episode. Steven spends most of it obsessed with getting everybody together to have his breakfast. I love the line, "It has all the power of breakfast." Or all the power of a breakfast. I forget which it was, but either way it was great when the monster possesses the Together Breakfast. And I also really like how afterwards none of them, after it's destroyed and they make a new one, none of them can bring themselves to eat it because it, as Garnet says, it tried to kill them. It was a nice little touch. Because I expected them at some point to eat the Together Breakfast, either to defeat the monster by eating it or eat the new one, and neither happened. So, good on you, show. You had a twist. I still do not understand why strawberries are apparently dubstep. That is odd, but far from the oddest thing which I have encountered today. We will get to that. Anyway, that was basically a cute, fluffy little episode. Next episode was quite the opposite. Fribo got a little too real when Petey is talking about how he has a job for which he gets money, but the money is never worth the time the job has stolen from him. Yeah, I feel ya, man. If I could work 3/4 the hours for 3/4 the pay and still get benefits, life would be way better. But then our capitalist society wouldn't be stealing my labor and using it to perpetuate my enslavement, and then where would we be? Yeah. Anyway, this was Frybo. This was the episode where Steven's pants get possessed by a crystal shard, which is another really weird statement, but still not the weirdest I'm going to be making in this video. His pants get possessed by a crystal shard, which he then retrieves, and then in an attempt to save his friend Petey from having to spend all day in a horrible Fry costume advertising his dad's shop, he deliberately possesses, he uses the shard to deliberately possess the Fry costume, which then, of course, after they order it to feed people or order it to make people eat fries, it takes that order literally, starts destroying things. It's sort of a Sorcerer's Apprentice type thing, only they never, the forming of an army of crystal shard possessed clothes is actually a good thing, done deliberately, so that they can then take out the Fry costume. Which, with Garnet's help, they do. I love when she stabs it in the eye and ketchup comes gushing out, and it spends the whole rest of the fight with this big ketchup stain down one side of its face. I mean, how the censors let them get away with that? To which the answer is ketchup. Also, if regular shows anything to go by, Cartoon Network censors have been asleep at the wheel for years. But still, it was a fun one. I love the Viking funeral for the Fry costume at the end, and the fact that in an 11-minute episode they managed to work in this whole subplot about Petey and his dad, based mostly on the fact that we know exactly how that plot plays out, so they're able to do it in basically one sentence per plot beat. Basically every line Petey's dad has advances that plot one beat. Very efficient plotting, relying very much on the fact that it's a very cliche plot, but at the same time, you don't expect even a cliche B-plot to play out in an 11-minute show. It's an example of one of the ways in which television has greatly accelerated in the past decade or two. The information density of it and the pace at which things happen has gone up a great deal because it increasingly expects the audience to know things, remember things, keep track of things to a far greater extent than television, say, when I was a kid. And this holds across all types of television. It is, in my opinion, one of the reasons that we have reached a point where television is just straightforwardly better than movies. When you have big-name directors leaving film to do a TV show, that tells you something about the relative status of those two media. And things like the trick this episode pulls are part of why television is developing a language of its own, it's developing an approach of its own, it's quit being film's little brother and become something new and unique that takes advantage of the possibilities of the medium, and in particular, takes advantage of its ubiquity. Everyone knows how TV works, and so you can do things like that cliche plot. I think that basically leaves the third episode. Cat Fingers. This is the one where Steven learns how to turn his fingers into cats, because apparently all gems have shape-shifting powers. He was attempting to turn into a cat, period, but ended up with just one finger at first, but then he was able to replicate that with his other fingers. And he goes around town impressing people with it and showing off and so forth. And then, inevitably, the minute the other gems leave, he loses control of it and starts growing cats all over his body. The result is the weirdest phrase I think I'm going to say today: Akira with adorable kittens. Because that's basically what happens. He turns into that thing from the climax of the movie Akira. Just kittens growing all over him, kittens growing on kittens, kittens growing out of all parts of his body, just cat heads everywhere. Fortunately, they hate water, so he is able to, with his dad's help, defeat them by going through a car wash. There is the predictable jump scare at the end, and then probably my favorite bit of the episode, he just does nothing but make cat puns. And, they're all kind of the standard things you would say at the end of an episode of a cartoon to close it out, with a bad pun. But the other characters just kind of, I think Pearl groans, Amethyst chuckles weakly, and Garnet just ignores it. So Steven keeps making more puns. I think he makes 6 or 7 before the end of the episode, and it's great because, again, it's riffing on standard cartoon practices and doing something new with them. Really fun stuff. Still freaked out by Akira with adorable kittens, but you know what? If that's the kind of thing this show is going to do, then I am going to embrace it and enjoy it. Overall, this was a lot of fun. I feel like we got a lot of characterization for Amethyst over this block. We already have a fairly clear picture of who Steven is. We're starting to get more of one of who Amethyst is. She's a slob. She is kind of reckless. But she's also, of the three, the one who believes in Steven the most, is most willing to let him try things for himself, is most willing to teach him, and really seems to be like his buddy out of the three, where, Pearl is more the disciplinarian and Garnet is more distant. Amethyst is the one he can have fun with. We see that with her chasing him in the first episode, Together Breakfast. We see it with her being willing to engage with him and teach him shapeshifting in Cat Fingers. So that was pretty cool. Getting to learn more about her. She's but at the same time she knows who she is. When Pearl tells her off, Amethyst's response is, yeah, that's reasonable. Which annoys Pearl because Pearl wants a fight. But that's Amethyst saying, yeah, she knows. She screwed up. The consequence of being the kind of person Amethyst is that will happen. And I think to Amethyst, it's not that big a deal. And, Amethyst's attitude is do what you want and accept what happens as a consequence. Whatever happens, you accept it. You deal with it. Whereas Pearl is more of a warrior and planner, which is where I think a lot of their clashing comes from. You see it as well with, Amethyst being totally willing to be a slob. That's her fondness for chaos, her preference. I like it. She's cool. I think I like all these characters so far, but I think Amethyst is probably shaping up to be my favorite. So, yay. Anyway, I'll be back next week with episodes 7 through 9. Have a good one.